As far as Metroidvanias go, 2015 was a pretty big year for them. The tale goes that after the death of Metroid and Castlevania, indie games started to fill the hole that they left in the genre. Amidst all the other games that became classics in exploratory gameplay, however, one really stood out to everyone. And that game was Ori and the Blind Forest. There are many reasons this game stood up above its peers, from its gorgeous visuals and massive world to its focus on platforming and tight movement. What made it so memorable for me, though, was its story and theming. The story isn't some grand original masterpiece, but it really made me feel for the characters, despite most of them never even talking. So how does Ori and the Blind Forest make you care about its characters? Let's get into it. The first thing Ori does so well in this regard is giving you time to absorb the atmosphere. Thanks to stellar lighting and visual clarity of weather with trees blowing and the rain pouring down, the forest feels so real that you can imagine yourself in it. The voice of the tree is perfect, having a deep, commanding voice. If you weren't paying attention before, you are definitely paying attention now. Not to mention the music and sound from the storm. In just 10 seconds there is so much to absorb as Ori draws you into its world that is far from static. Then, it pulls a Forrest Gump as you watch what looks like a feather float through the forest until coming across Naru. This begins the start of the intro sequence. Rather than letting you play as Ori right away, the game gives you time to experience the more casual life of a simple forest creature. By letting you play as Naru, you can fully feel for the character. Naru is slower and heavier, which is easily conveyed by clean animations. You can also easily relate to Naru here, because like you, she has no idea what's going on. Both of you are going to investigate this mysterious creature. For this next part, you actually get to play as Ori, but still without any abilities or urgency pushing you forward. We know that Ori has lived with Naru for a while, thanks to a carving on a rock and Ori's general comfort inside the home. Ori runs out to meet Naru as they work together to shake berries from a tree. It's clear that they are friends and family. So without overanalyzing every little piece of the game, in less than 5 minutes you already formed a connection to the world, Naru, and Ori. It's all because of a beautiful intro sequence that puts story first so it doesn't get muddled up in the rest of the game. Near the end of the introduction, Naru becomes malnourished, and it's up to you and Ori to save them. This is something you definitely want to do because Naru saved you and raised you. Ori and the Blind Forest takes time to slowly build a connection between characters, so when they are torn apart, it's like a band-aid being ripped off. It's sudden, and it's painful. Another way Ori shows you its characters is what I like to call the back entrance method. The clearest example of this is when you meet the Gumon named Gumo at the base of the Jinzo tree. When you first see him, he's taking the water vein to open the entrance to the tree. After following him to try and retrieve it, Gumo gets stuck under a rock and you help him free. Since you showed kindness to Gumo, he gives you back the water vein and runs away. So far we know very little about the character, and why he took the water vein. At least until you reach the Forlorn Ruins, which is the home of the Gumon. You learn that they were inventors and see that all the others are frozen. Sen, who is your little light companion, tells you that Gumo is the last of his kind. Now his actions from before make sense. Gumo is lost and alone after everyone he knew died. He's confused and he's scared, which is something Ori can relate to after leaving Naru. By learning about the character from external methods after initially meeting them beyond dialogue, you remember them more. You remember wondering about the mystery of the character early on. If we think about it, that's the same pattern that we see in Kuro's story. All we know from the beginning is that she destroyed the light of the tree. However, after escaping Forlorn Ruins and finding her last egg, we see what was going on. Kuro is just trying to protect her last child. which is shown in a beautiful cinematic cutscene. Once again, we see the character's actions which plant questions in our mind, so when we finally see the whole story from other sources like locations and music, we remember it as especially meaningful. The sequel, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, follows the same process with a few of its characters. Though many of the characters now talk, are still shown through other methods. Ku is seen entirely through another great prologue sequence which hits all the right notes of the first one. We know that her new family has raised her and how she is sad about her broken wing. So just like the first game, when characters get separated, it's sad to see a family lost from each other. Shriek, on the other hand, is shown similarly to Kuro. We see all the crazy stuff she does in Naiwen, but learn more about her later, through locations and flashbacks. She was an outcast amongst the other owls because of her looks, and she was left to fend for herself. Altogether, it makes for an interesting story with three-dimensional characters, who are far from bland. So to sum it all up, the Ori series makes you care about its characters by giving you time early on to live in their shoes outside of gameplay. The game lets you physically feel and see the character through their animations and controls. The game also isn't afraid to leave you with questions about characters early on before coming back later for surprising reveals that are interesting and heartwarming. Across the board, the game is all about showing rather than telling, which is a fantastic way to have players be invested in a narrative. So by exploring the world of the Ori series, you are also exploring the story.